It was late at night in India. The city lights were still on, but inside the control room, the air felt heavy and silent. Screens were glowing. Numbers were moving. Time was running. No one was talking. Every person in the room was looking at one big screen. On that screen was a small spacecraft, far away from Earth, moving slowly toward the moon. It was not just a machine. It was a dream. A dream built by years of hard work, failure, hope, and belief. Outside the building, the world looked normal. Cars moved. People slept. But inside this room, history was waiting to happen, or to break. One scientist wiped sweat from his face. Another held a pen so tightly that his fingers turned white. They all knew one thing very clearly. This moment could change everything. The spacecraft was close to the moon now. Very close. Too close to turn back. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. A sharp beep. Everyone looked up. One of the engineers leaned forward in his chair. His eyes moved fast across the data. His face changed color. Something was wrong. The spacecraft was not responding the way it should. Its speed was slightly higher than planned. Not much, but enough to cause fear. If the speed stayed high, the landing would fail. If the landing failed, the mission would be lost. Again. A senior scientist stood up slowly. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed worry. "Check the signal again," he said. The engineer nodded and typed fast. Seconds felt like minutes. The moon was not forgiving. It never was. Many countries had tried to land there. Most of them failed. The moon did not care about effort or dreams. It only respected precision. The data came again. The problem was real. The spacecraft needed correction. And fast. Someone whispered, "We need to send a command." Another voice replied, "But the delay." Yes, the delay. The signal from Earth to the moon did not travel instantly. It took time. Precious time. By the time a command reached the spacecraft, it might already be too late. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. A young engineer looked at the main scientist. His voice was low. "Sir, should we make the call?" Everyone understood what that meant. This was the desperate call. The call that could save the mission. Or destroy it forever. Sending commands at this stage was dangerous. The spacecraft was already in a critical phase. One wrong instruction could confuse the system. One small mistake could cause a crash. But doing nothing was also dangerous. Time was slipping away. The main scientist closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered another night. Years ago, that night was full of hope too. And it ended in silence. The loss of contact. The broken hearts. The tears no one saw on camera. Failure had taught them lessons. Hard lessons? They did not want to repeat history. He opened his eyes. "Prepare the command," he said. The room came alive. Fingers moved quickly on keyboards. Screens changed. Numbers updated. The command had to be perfect. Every word. Every value. Every second. This was not just science. This was trust. Trust in machines. Trust in data. Trust in each other. Outside the control room, media vans were waiting. Reporters were talking. Millions of people were watching live broadcasts. They saw calm faces. They heard confident voices. But they did not see this moment. They did not see fear. They did not see doubt. They did not hear the fast-beating hearts. Inside the room. The command was ready. The engineer looked at the scientist. "Sir?" "Ready to send." The scientist nodded slowly. "Send it." A single click. That was all. One click sent a message across space. A message traveling hundreds of thousands of kilometers. A message carrying hope. Now, there was nothing more they could do. They had to wait. Waiting was the hardest part. No one sat down. No one spoke. No one moved. Seconds passed. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. The signal had not reached the moon yet. The moon was silent. The spacecraft was alone. It had to understand the command. It had to respond correctly. It had to survive. One scientist folded his hands. Another closed his eyes. Someone else stared without blinking. Then, a new signal appeared. Data started flowing. Again. Slowly. Carefully. The speed began to change. Very slightly. But it was changing. A soft sound filled the room. Not a cheer. Not yet. Just a breath. A breath of relief. It's responding, someone said. But no one smiled. It was not over. Not even close. The spacecraft was still falling toward this moon. The most dangerous part was yet to come. This call had only bought them time. Time to hope. Time to fear. Time to believe. The scientist looked at the screen again. His voice was steady, but deep inside, he knew the truth. The moon test was still waiting, and the next few minutes would decide everything. Far away. The spacecraft continued its journey, silent, brave, alone. The world was watching. History was holding its breath, and this was only the beginning. The control room stayed quiet, but the silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was full of waiting. The desperate call had worked. At least, that is what the numbers were saying. The spacecraft had slowed down, just a little. Not enough to relax. Not enough to celebrate. But enough to survive for now. Far away from Earth, the spacecraft moved closer to the moon. The moon looked calm and bright from a distance. But everyone in the control room knew the truth. The moon was dangerous. It had no air. No mercy. No second chances. The spacecraft was now entering a region where Earth's gravity mattered less, and the moon's gravity began to pull harder. This was the point of no return. One engineer spoke softly. It has entered lunar influence. Those words carried weight. Once inside this zone, turning back was almost impossible. The moon was now in control. The spacecraft rotated slowly. Its sensors adjusted. Its systems checked themselves again and again. Every part had to work perfectly. Inside the machine, there was no fear, no doubt, only instructions. But on Earth, fear was everywhere. A senior scientist leaned closer to the screen. His eyes followed a thin line showing altitude. It was dropping, slowly, steadily. Too steady. That slope is sharp, he said. Another engineer replied, within limits. For now. For now, the scientist repeated. Those two words felt heavy. The moon's surface was not smooth. It was full of craters, rocks, shadows, and unknown dangers, especially near the South Pole. No mission had explored this area before. No map was perfect. That was the risk. The spacecraft had to find a safe place on its own. There was no joystick, no human hand. Only code. The spacecraft entered the shadow side of the moon. And suddenly, the signal faded. Not fully gone, but weak. Very weak. This was expected, but still terrifying. The moon blocked direct communication with Earth. For some time, the spacecraft would fly alone, without guidance, without help. A young scientist swallowed hard. We are losing signal strength. The room froze again. This silence was different from before. This silence felt deeper, longer, colder. The spacecraft was flying behind the moon now, hidden from Earth's eyes. No data. No updates. No control. Only trust. The scientists could do nothing but wait. 1 minute passed. Then another. Someone checked the clock. Someone else checked the backup systems. Even though it would change nothing, a memory crossed many minds at once. That other mission. That other silence. That same waiting. No one said it out loud. The moon did not care about past pain. It only cared about the present moment not far from Earth. The spacecraft fired its engines gently. Not too strong, not too weak, just enough to adjust its path. This move had to be perfect. A small error here could push it into a crash orbit, or send it spinning forever. Inside the control room, one engineer whispered, "Come on. Hold steady." Time moved slowly. Seconds felt stretched. Then a faint signal appeared. Very faint, but real. The spacecraft was coming out from behind the moon. The room came alive again. Signal returning. Someone said. Data began to flow back. Bit by bit. Altitude confirmed. Speed within range. Orientation stable. A soft sound of relief moved across the room. Still no cheers. Still no smiles. They had learned that celebrations came later. If they came at all. The spacecraft was now in lunar orbit. It was circling the moon, watching the surface below, studying shadows, measuring slopes, searching for danger. This phase was quiet, but critical. The spacecraft was learning. Each orbit made the path clearer. Each pass brought it closer to the final descent. But with every orbit, fuel was being used. It was no endless time. One scientist pointed at the screen. "Fuel margin is tight." Another replied, "We planned for this." "Yes," the first said. "But plans and reality are different." Outside the building, night was turning into early morning. Some people had not slept. Others had forgotten hunger. The moon stayed the same, silent, distant, watching. The spacecraft completed another orbit. Now, the next step was near. The final descent, the most dangerous part of the mission. The part where everything could be lost in seconds. The main scientist looked around the room. His voice was calm, but serious. "We are entering the final phase soon," he said. "After this, there will be no more corrections." Everyone understood. Once descent started, the spacecraft would be fully on its own. No calls, no changes, no second chances. Only the machine, only the moon, and only fate. Far above the moon's surface, the spacecraft adjusted its position one last time. Its legs were folded. Its sensors were awake. Its system was ready. Below it, the moon waited. Dark, silent, unforgiving. The final countdown had not begun yet, but it was coming. And when it did, the world would hold its breath once more. The moon looked peaceful from far away. But peace was only an illusion. As the spacecraft moved in its orbit, the moon's gravity slowly began to take control. This pull was quiet, invisible, but powerful. Once caught in it, escape was almost impossible. Inside the control room, the scientists knew this phase very well. They had studied it for years, simulations, tests, endless calculations. But space was never exactly like simulations. A screen showed a long curved line. It was the planned descent path. Thin, perfect, fragile. One small push away from this line could mean disaster. The spacecraft adjusted itself again, very gently. It was preparing its body for the final drop. Its legs stayed folded, like a runner waiting at the start line. Outside, the sky over India was slowly changing color. Night was fading. Morning was coming. But no one inside the room noticed that time had lost meaning. Only altitude mattered now. Only speed. Altitude decreasing. An engineer said quietly. Another replied, "Rate is nominal." Nominal. That word was comforting. And dangerous. Because nominal could change in seconds. The moon's surface came into sharper view. Craters appeared like dark wounds. Long shadows stretched across the land. Some areas looked smooth. Others looked deadly. The South Pole was different from any place explored before. Cold, dark, uncertain. The spacecraft, scanned the surface again and again. Its cameras searched for a safe place. Its sensors measured slopes, rocks, and shadows. It was choosing where to land. This decision could not be changed later. A scientist pointed at a highlighted area on the screen. That zone looks risky, another answered. Too many rocks. A third voice added, shift to backup site. The backup site appeared. Slightly farther. Slightly smaller. But safer. The system compared both. Then it decided. Backup site confirmed. No. One argued. Trusting the machine was no longer a choice. It was the only way. The spacecraft moved into position for descent. This was the last stable moment before chaos. Once descent started, everything would happen fast. Very fast. The main scientist took a deep breath. Begin powered descent, he said. A command was sent. Far away. The spacecraft responded. Its engines fired. Not loudly. Not violently. Just enough. The fall toward the moon began. Speed increased. Altitude dropped. Numbers changed faster now. The room felt tighter, warmer, heavier. Heights. Passing planned markers, an engineer said. Velocity? Another asked. Within limits, came the reply. Within limits again. The spacecraft tilted itself. This move was dangerous. A wrong angle could send it spinning, but the system corrected smoothly. For a moment, everything looked perfect. Then a warning appeared. Not red. Not flashing, but unusual. Fuel consumption was slightly higher than expected. Not critical, but noticeable. Someone spoke quickly. Fuel margin decreasing. The main scientist nodded. He already saw it. More fuel meant more control. Less fuel meant no correction later. There was no turning back. The moon was closer now. Very close. Details on the surface became clear. Sharp edges. Deep holes. Long shadows that hid unknown dangers. The spacecraft's shadow appeared on the moon. Small. Alone. The spacecraft was no longer falling. It was fighting gravity now. Using its engines to slow down. This phase is called braking. It was one of the hardest parts. Too much braking, and fuel would finish early. Too little braking, and the crash would be violent. The engine performance stayed stable. For now, speed reducing, came a voice. Altitude? Another asked, dropping fast. Fast was expected, but still frightening. The spacecraft passed a critical height marker. Silence filled the room. This marker was where many missions had failed before. The moon remembered them. Everyone waited. The data refreshed. Spacecraft was still stable. A quiet breath moved across the room, but no one smiled. The hardest part was still ahead. The spacecraft was now close enough that one wrong move could not be fixed. There was no time. No fuel. No chance. Only precision. Only courage. The moon's gravity pulled harder now. It wanted the spacecraft to fall. To crash. To become another piece of silent metal on its surface. But the spacecraft resisted. It slowed down more. It adjusted again. Its legs prepared to open. Below. The landing site grew larger. Closer. Clearer. The main scientist spoke again. His voice was low but firm. Next phase will begin soon. Everyone knew what that meant. The final descent. The moment when history would either be written or buried in lunar dust. Far above the moon, the spacecraft continued its careful fall. The engines burned. Fuel dropped. Time ran out. And the moon waited. The control room was no longer loud or busy. It felt frozen in time. The spacecraft was now very close to the moon. So close that mistakes were no longer numbers on a screen. They were real, final. The moon's surface filled the monitors. No more distant craters. No more wide views. Now, every rock looked dangerous. Every shadow looked like a trap. The spacecraft slowed down again. This phase was the most delicate dot. It was no longer just falling. It was choosing how to fall. The engines adjusted their power carefully. Not too strong. Not too weak. Each second mattered. Each decision mattered. Altitude 5 kilometers, an engineer said softly. 5 kilometers, not so close. Yet still so far. At this height, the moon showed its true face. Rough land. Sharp edges. Dark areas where no sunlight reached. The South Pole was colder and more mysterious than any place explored before. The spacecraft scanned the ground continuously. Its system compared real images with stored maps. But the moon was never exactly the same as maps. Shadows were deeper. Rocks were sharper. Slopes were steeper. A safe landing spot could turn deadly in seconds. The spacecraft system detected a small slope ahead. Not dangerous, but not perfect. It adjusted sideways. This move was risky. Side movement meant using extra fuel. Extra fuel meant less time later, but landing on a slope could mean tipping over. The system chose safety. Fuel dropped again. In the control room. One scientist clenched his fists. Fuel margin is thin, he said. No one replied. They already knew. The spacecraft was now less than 3 kilometers above the surface. The engines changed sound slightly. A different pattern. A different rhythm. This was expected, but still unsettling. The spacecraft rotated slowly into a more upright position. This move was critical. If the angle was wrong, the legs would not touch evenly. One leg first could mean disaster. Attitude. Stable, someone reported. That single sentence brought a small wave of relief, but it passed quickly. 2 kilometers. The spacecraft released small bursts of thrust, short, controlled, like careful steps in the dark. Below. The landing site was clear now. A patch of ground that looked calm, flat, almost welcoming. Almost. The moon had tricked many missions before. No one trusted appearances. One engineer whispered, "Come on. Stay steady." No one told him to be quiet. Everyone felt the same. 1 kilometer. At this point, there was no room for correction. The spacecraft was fully on its own. Earth could only watch. The signal delay meant that whatever happened now had already happened before. The scientists even saw it. That thought was terrifying. The spacecraft opened its landing. Legs. Click. Lock. Confirmed. The legs were ready. The moon was very close. Now. Dust began to move beneath the engines. Fine lunar dust lifted slowly, creating a faint cloud. This made the sensors work harder. Vision became unclear. This was dangerous. Dust could confuse the system. Confusion could mean wrong decisions. The spacecraft slowed even more. Too slow, and fuel would finish before touchdown. Too fast, and the landing would be hard. The balance was perfect. Barely. 500 meters. The control room felt like it stopped breathing. No typing. No talking. No movement. Only eyes. The spacecraft hovered briefly. Just a moment. A final check. A final decision. Then, it began. The last drop. 100 meters. The moon's surface was directly below. 50 meters. Dust rose higher now. 30 meters. Sensors struggled but held. 10 meters. Everyone leaned forward. 5 meters. The engines reduced. Power. The spacecraft descended. Slowly, carefully, like it was afraid to wake the moon. Then silence. Complete. Silence. The data froze. No new numbers. No confirmation. No signal. The control room was empty of sound. This silence was worse than noise. Worse than alarms. It lasted only seconds, but it felt endless. The spacecraft was either standing on the moon or lying broken in the dust, no one knew yet. History was suspended in that silence, and the next signal would decide everything. The silence did not break immediately. It stretched out inside the control room. Time stopped having meaning. No one looked at the clock. No one blinked. Every eye was fixed on the same screen, waiting for one sign. Just one. The data line was still frozen. This was the most dangerous kind of moment. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet and unknown. The moon had not said yes. The moon had not said no. It said nothing. A scientist whispered, "Signal delay." Wait. Everyone already knew that. But hearing it helped. A little. The spacecraft was so far away that even light took time to travel. Whatever had happened on the moon was already done. The people on Earth were only watching the past. 5 seconds passed. 10. Small green dot blinked. Once. Then again. The room reacted. But no one spoke yet. Numbers started moving. Slowly. Altitude. 0. Speed. 0. Those two numbers meant everything. The system refreshed. Touchdown confirmed, a calm voice said. For a second, the room did not react. Then, the control room exploded with sound. Claps, cheers, cries, laughter. Some scientists raised their hands. Others closed their eyes in relief. A few wiped tears from their faces, without caring who saw. Years of work. Years of failure. Years of waiting. All released in one moment. The spacecraft was standing on the fall. Moon. Alive. Whole. Real. India had done it. But the celebration was not wild. It was controlled. Careful. The scientists knew the mission was not over yet. Landing was only the beginning. Stability check, someone said. Data came in again. Leg pressure. Normal. Tilt. Within limits. Power. Stable. The spacecraft was safe. The moon had accepted it. The main scientist finally allowed himself a smile. Not big, not loud. Just deep. Outside, the world reacted instantly. News channels shouted. Social media exploded. People hugged. People prayed. People cried. But inside the control room, the feeling was different. This was not about noise. This was about relief. The spacecraft sent its first image from the moon. Black and white. Dusty. Simple. But priceless. It showed a small piece of the moon's surface. Quiet, ancient, untouched. A place no human-made object had ever reached. Before. Especially not here. The South Pole. The coldest, darkest region of the moon. The scientists stared at the image. This is real, someone said softly. The spacecraft adjusted its position slightly. A small movement to ensure balance. The legs held firm. It was standing strong. The moon did not shake. The ground did not break. The dream did not fade. Next came the system. Checks. Temperature. Power. Communication. Everything looked good. The spacecraft had survived. The hardest test. The moon had tested it. And it had passed. But there was one more thing. One more silent question. Could it move? The command was sent. The ramp slowly opened. Very slowly. Dust fell. A small rover waited inside. Patient. Quiet. This rover had its own mission. Its own risk. If the ramp failed, the rover would stay trapped forever. The room went quiet again. Not with fear, but with respect. The ramp touched the lunar surface. The rover moved forward. Slightly. Then stopped. And moved again. And rolled onto the moon. A new chapter had begun. Hands had not touched the moon, but human minds had reached it. The main scientist looked at the screen one last time before speaking. This is not the end, he said. This is the beginning. Far away, under a dark lunar sky, The spacecraft stood still, proud, silent. The moon had answered, and this time, it said yes. The moon was still silent. It did not celebrate. It did not react. It simply existed, the same way it had for billions of years. But something had changed. For the first time, a small machine was moving near the moon's south pole. Slowly, carefully, like a guest who did not want to disturb. The host. The rover rolled forward. Its wheels touched the lunar soil. Soft dust rose and fell back gently. There was no wind, no sound, only motion. In the control room, the scientists watched closely. This moment felt different from the landing. Less dramatic, but just as important. Landing proved survival. Movement proved life. The rover stopped, then turned slightly. Then moved again. Mobility confirmed, a voice said. That sentence carried quiet pride. This rover was not large. It was not fast. It did not look powerful. But it carried something more important than size or speed. It carried purpose. The rover's cameras turned on. They looked around for the first time. The images came back slowly, line by line. The moon appeared rough, uneven, and endless. No flags. No footprints. No human presence. Yet this place was no longer untouched. The rover was there. A scientist zoomed into the image. Small rocks. Fine dust. Long shadows. This soil has never been studied before, she said. The South Pole was special. Deep inside its shadows. Scientists believed there could be water ice. Frozen, hidden, protected from sunlight. Water meant possibility. Future missions. Future humans. Future life beyond Earth. But first, they needed proof. The rover extended one of its instruments, slowly, carefully. It touched the ground. Data began to flow. Not exciting numbers. Not dramatic signals. Just information. But information was everything. The rover tested the soil. It checked temperature. It measured elements. It listened to the moon in ways humans never could. Inside the control room, the excitement was quiet but deep. This was not a moment for shouting. This was a moment for focus. Every reading mattered. Every signal was history. The rover moved again, a little farther this time. It left tracks behind. Thin lines in the dust. Footprints without feet. No human had walked here. But human effort had arrived. One scientist leaned back in his chair. He looked tired, happy, proud. Years ago, he said softly, we were dreaming about this. No one replied. They did not need to. The rover stopped near a small rock. The assistant decided to study it. The rock looked ordinary. But on the moon, nothing was ordinary. The rover's instruments scanned it. Results appeared. New data. New questions. This mission was not about answers only. It was about opening doors. Outside the control room, the sun was high now. A new day had begun on Earth. Children were going to school. People were going to work. Many of them did not know that at this very moment, a small robot was changing history. Quietly. The rover completed its task and paused. It entered standby mode to save power. The moon was cold. Extremely cold. Survival here was always temporary. The scientists knew this. Time on the moon was limited, but impact was not measured in time. It was measured in meaning. The main scientist stood and looked at the large screen. The rover was small against the vast moon, almost invisible, yet powerful. We did not conquer the moon, he said calmly. We learned from it. Far away, under a dark sky, the rover rested. Its tracks remained in the dust. The moon did not erase them. They would stay there. Quiet proof of human curiosity. No footsteps. No voices. No flags waving. Just a message written in dust. We came to learn. The rover did not know it was making history. It did not understand pride or success. It only followed commands. But what it was doing mattered more than it could ever know. The moon's south pole was quiet, as it had always been. Cold shadows stretched across the land. Sunlight touched only a few areas, leaving the rest in darkness that had lasted for millions of years. In this silent world, the rover waited. Inside the control room on Earth, the scientists did not wait. They worked. Landing was over. Movement was confirmed. But the real mission had just begun. Now came the reason they had come this far. To understand the moon, to learn its secrets, to prepare for the future. The rover woke up again after a short rest. Its systems checked temperature, power, and balance. Everything was still stable. That was good news. Survival on the moon was never guaranteed. The rover slowly turned its camera toward the horizon. The image that came back was simple but powerful. A flat land. Long shadows. A sky without clouds. No Earth in sight. For the first time, humans were seeing the moon's south pole this way. Not from orbit. Not from far away. From the ground, a scientist pointed at the screen. That shadowed region. It never sees sunlight. Those regions were special. Scientists believed that water ice could exist there, trapped and protected from heat. Water on the moon could change everything. It could support future missions. It could help humans stay longer. It could be turned into fuel. But belief was not enough. They needed proof. The rover moved forward again, slowly approaching the edge of a shadowed area. Its wheels moved carefully. The ground here was uneven. One wrong move could trap it forever. The moon did not forgive mistakes. The rover stopped. It was close enough. Going deeper into shadow would be dangerous. Extremely cold temperatures could damage systems. Power could drop fast. The system calculated risks. Then, it made a choice. It extended its instrument toward the soil. The control room fell quiet again. Everyone knew this moment mattered. Instrument touched the lunar dust. It began testing the soil's composition. The data traveled through space. Delayed but steady. Numbers appeared on the screen. Not exciting to most people. But to the scientists, they were priceless. Elements. Minerals. Temperatures. Then something interesting appeared. Hydrogen. Levels were higher than expected. Not confirmation, but a strong hint. A young scientist leaned forward. This is promising. The main scientist nodded. His face stayed calm, but his eyes showed excitement. This is why we came, he said quietly. The rover pulled back its instrument. It had done its job. For now. It moved sideways, creating new tracks in the dust. Each movement was slow, careful, respectful, like the rover understood it was a guest. Back on Earth, news spread quickly. Headlines talked about success. Social media was full of pride and celebration. But inside the control room, the mood was different. They were not thinking about headlines. They were thinking about tomorrow. The moon day was long. Extremely long. Weeks of sunlight followed by weeks of darkness. When night came, temperatures would drop so low that survival would be nearly impossible. The rover's time was limited. They had to use every moment wisely. The rover took more images. Close-ups of soil. Wide shots of the landscape. Shadows that hid secrets. Rocks shaped by ancient impacts. Each image told a story. A story older than Earth itself. One scientist stared at a picture for a long time. This rock. It has not changed in billions of years. On Earth, everything changed. Wind, water, life. Time moved slowly. That was its gift. The rover paused again to save power. It entered sleep mode briefly. The sunlight angle was changing. Energy had to be managed carefully. The scientists planned the next steps. Small movements. More tests. No risks. This mission was not about speed, It was about patience. As the hours passed, the rover woke again. It moved to a slightly higher area, giving it a better view of the surroundings. The camera turned slowly, capturing a wide panorama. The image reached Earth. The room went silent. The moon looked endless, empty, beautiful. No borders, no nations, no conflicts. Just space and time. This image, someone said softly, will inspire a generation. They were right. Children would look at it and dream. Students would study it. Future scientists would remember it. The rover had become more than a machine. It had become a symbol of quiet determination. The rover sent one more set of data. Temperature readings showed extreme cold in nearby shadows. Survival there would be difficult without advanced systems. The moon was teaching them limits and possibilities. As the lunar sun slowly moved, shadows shifted. Time was passing. The rover's power levels were still safe, but not unlimited. The scientists made a decision. One more movement, the main scientist said. Then we rest. The rover moved a short distance and stopped. It faced the horizon again. This was enough. It had done what it came to do. That night on Earth, the control room slowly emptied. Not everyone left. Some stayed, watching the data, watching the moon. They were tired, but it was a good tired. The kind that comes after something meaningful. Far away, the rover stood still. Its tracks remained in the dust. The moon did not erase them. There was no sound, no movement, only stillness. But in that stillness, a message existed. A message not written in words, a message written in dust, shadows, and silent data. It said, humans are curious. Humans learn from failure. Humans return stronger. The moon did not speak, but it listened. And this time, it allowed the visitor to stay. For a while, the rover rested under the cold lunar sky. Its work was not over, but its place in history was secure. Not because it landed, not because it moved, but because it proved something important, that even with limited power, limited time, and many past failures, human belief can still reach the most silent places in the universe. And leave behind a message that will last longer than any footprint. The world slowly returned to normal. News channels moved on to other stories. Social media found new trends. The loud celebrations became quiet memories. But on the moon, nothing changed. The rover was still there. Silent, patient, waiting. Inside the control room, the screens were not as crowded now. Fewer people sat in the chairs. Fewer voices filled the air. But the mission was still alive. The real work always began after success. The rover woke up again. Its systems checked power and temperature. The lunar day was still active, but the shadows were slowly growing longer. Time was running. The scientists knew this phase well. Every space mission had a moment when excitement faded and responsibility took its place. Now was that moment. The rover sent another image. This one was simple. A flat surface. Long shadows. No movement. Yet the image felt powerful. It showed calm. One scientist looked at it and smiled softly. The moon looks peaceful. Another replied, it always was. We are the noisy ones. They continued analyzing data. Soil readings. Temperature changes. Surface patterns. Each small detail added to a bigger picture. A picture of a place humans wanted to understand, not control. The rover attempted one final small movement. Just a few centimeters. It was careful not to waste power. The wheels turned. The dust shifted. New tracks appeared. Then it stopped. This was enough. The system entered a low power state. It would wake up only if conditions allowed. If not, it would sleep forever. And that was okay. Because the mission had already given the world what it needed. Knowledge. Hope. Late at night. The main scientist stood alone in the control room. The lights were dim. The screens glowed softly. He looked tired, but peaceful. He remembered the failures, the doubts, the questions, the moments when giving up felt easier. He remembered the silence years ago. The one that followed Lost Dot. His silence was different. This silence felt complete. We did not rush. He said quietly to no one. We did not give up. He looked at the moon's image one last time. This is how progress looks, he thought. Slow, quiet, honest. Far away, the rover rested. No flag was planted. No message was spoken, but its presence said enough. It said that success does not always arrive with noise. Sometimes, it arrives with patience. The moon had not been conquered. It had been respected. And that respect mattered. As the lunar sun dipped lower, temperatures dropped. The rover systems slowly shut down one by one. Not in fear, not in failure, but in rest. The moon night was coming, cold, long, unforgiving. If the rover never woke again, it would still be remembered, because it changed how people looked at space. It showed that big dreams do not always need big budgets. They need belief, learning, and courage to try again. Back on Earth, a young student watched a replay of the landing. His eyes were wide. His mind was racing. He did not see metal or machines. He saw a possibility. In another city, a young girl opened a book about space for the first time. The moon did not feel far anymore. It felt reachable. That was the real success. Not the landing. Not the rover. Not the data. But inspiration. The moon stayed silent, but somewhere between Earth and the stars, a quiet message traveled forward in time. A message for future missions. Future explorers. Future dreamers. It said, you will fail. You will fall. But if you learn and return with humility, even the silent moon will make space for you. And under a dark lunar sky, where no sound exists and no wind blows, a small machine rested forever, not as a hero, but as proof that human curiosity never truly sleeps.